You mentioned earlier the Queen's experience before you went to university. So that describe that for us.
Yeah, so that was the next progression, I guess. I think I did 2 or 3 years with the National Academy, then on to Allen's for a year or two, and then I guess there's a selection element to it. I got offered the opportunity to train with the national setup more on the adult side then, which used to be at Queen's before the National Tennis Centre was built in 2007. So joined a squad there with a coach, and then I was a full-time tennis player for the first time. So that coincided with finishing my GCSEs, and then went full-time and did one A-level via correspondence course. Back then it was kind of phone calls and sending things back and forth. I mean, I'm starting to say back in the day. That's
yeah, I
know. Yeah, I guess that's the speed of technological advancement, because it's not that long ago, but now it would seem completely crazy to send off an assignment.
Mail.
But yeah, exactly. So, so then joined Queen's, and they had a really good setup where they had housing families there that were providing the accommodation. So started living with a family in Putney, doing this one A-level on the side, which, again, in hindsight, you kind of look at everything. I was pretty much doing the bare minimum as a means to an end to keep my future eligibility for the States. Mm-hmm. And then, was in training set up there and starting to play mix of juniors and futures events. Yeah. My one of two quite serious injuries in my second to last year of juniors, so under 17, I had a stress fracture that kept me out for sort of 6 or 7 months. But other than that, it was all mixed.
Stress fracture where?
In L5 in my back, yeah. So
wow. Jeez.
Double pars defect in L5 of my back. So that was 6 or 7 months of out and rehab, and it came, which definitely stung at the time. The pain was sort of starting in the grass court period, and I'd been luckily given a wild card into the main draw of Junior Wimbledon. So, and that was going to be my first Junior Grand Slam experience. And I was in the draw, and we were practicing for it like 2 days in advance over at Rains Park. And the pain was really quite extreme that my coach said, and parents, go see the doctor. And because Wimbledon had started and all that, went to see the Wimbledon doctor of, really high standard. And he was like, scans quickly, all that stuff, didn't let me play. So I was literally in the program. My dad had the program with my name in it, and I couldn't play. But fortunately got to play the following year. But,
very good. So this is genuinely curious, because there are lots of people that listen to this from various different parts of the world. I think the last count was 52 different countries that people had listened to the show from. So you're saying Queen's Club, and a lot of people will picture Queen's Club. I was waiting to say Stella Artois, but the tournament. And for an outsider, even in the UK, they might think full-time training squad at Queen's, because all they see is the grass courts. So could you describe what it was like training? Like, where did you train? What was the training like? To try and almost cut away from that image of the leafy southwest London.
Yeah, exactly. So it was the same location, is there, and I would walk past those beautiful grass courts on a daily basis, getting to where we train. So at the back, if you were coming from Barons Court Tube Station, too much detail, but there were essentially two indoor courts at the back, with the gym, changing rooms and all that, and some physio space, a little players lounge. Very small training environment for what then was the National Tennis Centre, essentially. So I guess the LTA and Queen's Club had an agreement of some sort that space was ours. To train in, and then at times, if there was a lot of players in, we'd sort of use some of the courts. I don't know how the particulars of that deal worked out, but we'd go into the actual Queen's Club then and use some of the indoor courts, and when the weather was good, we get on the outdoor clay. Again, that was a sharing relationship with them, but essentially what the LTA had for their national training setup was 2 indoor hard courts, small gym, change rooms, and some physio space.
Yeah. And what would you say, to play devil's advocate, to anyone out there going, you cannot develop hard-working, gritty tennis players from Queen's Club?
Yeah.
I don't believe that, but that would be the perception people would say, or is that it's such a soft environment? How was your environment?
Well, yeah, I mean, you didn't feel like you're in Queen's Club first and foremost. So you walk through it and go, oh, they're perfectly manicured lawns every day. And then you'd be in a normal indoor tennis centre where you were surrounded by best players in the country, you know, Anne Kjotevong, and I remember Bally coming in and out of there. On the men's side, Greg training there, got to hit with him, Andy coming through the ranks, you know, Josh Goodall and the guys all above in the
Yeah.
years above me. And so you're there with, it's in a way, it's good because you're so exposed. It's a small environment.
Mm-hmm.
I was in there as 17, 18-year-old, and in terms of level, way off those guys. But as soon as you walk in, seeing them train, you're right next to them in the gym, and it was a really good, hard-working, kind of enclosed environment.
Yeah, I think it's something that annoys me slightly when people label or have a perception of a place based on some fantasy world that they've seen on TV, and people jump to all sorts of conclusions. But at the end of the day, like you say, tennis court is 7 to 8 feet long, 36 feet wide. It doesn't matter where it is. If you're working hard, you're working hard. So it was interesting, you know, you touched it on already, the whole idea about this, your first full-time or first time you experienced professional tennis when it was around 2005, I think. And but really the way you mentioned it earlier on is it didn't really start until 2012. So what are your thoughts on the idea of people going full-time? You know what I mean? It's like you say,
Right.
it's a statement that people make, is like, I'm full-time. Like, I have heard people say that, and I know the level they got to. I was a full-time touring pro, and I'm like, you didn't even have points. You know what I mean? They were just trying on the Futures Tour. They didn't even have points. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think you are a full-time player if that is what you're doing with all your time, you know, just as literally speaking as that. But I know what you mean. I think there's a clear distinction between, I guess it is almost what you wrap up in the word professional. So are you a pro player? Are you operating training in a professional environment, professional schedule, applying yourself in all those ways? And I guess at that age, and I guess the grey area was I wasn't fully committed to adult professional tennis. Still the junior tournaments happening, still some academics, and and then I guess because of my injury as well, that kind of slowed things down. But prior to that said, it was kind of reflecting on how I answered your first question, is I was playing full-time pro tennis before I went to uni, particularly that last year. Once completing my A-levels, back then you could remain eligible for American university with 1 year out of education, and I was playing a full future schedule. But just not doing that well in it. I think I went out to the States with around 1,000 in the world, about 8 points or so at 19. And again, it's all relative, you know, how you say doing well or not. But when you're in a national setup with players only a couple of years older than you that are 1, 2, 300 in the world, you don't feel like you're doing that well. So it was just then post uni, I guess, as well. I would add in that I made the conscious decision after university that I want to continue with this professionally, and I was excited to do it myself, and I was old enough to know what that meant and take a lot of ownership over it. Whereas it was still in those teen years, it was just the dream. I wanted to be a tennis player, but I didn't really.
I think that's almost the kind of thoughts I had, is that I was always struck by the words that Judy used, and I've obviously heard her say it a lot of time in different settings, but she would always kind of think about like one step ahead for the boys. And I'm sure she won't mind me saying this because she says it all the time, but she had to help or understand or prepare the boys for the life and business of being a professional player. And the more I thought about that, I just thought, I don't think we have a system's too formal a word, but we don't have a process where we literally help players learn what the life and business of being a professional player is. Now, that's not a criticism anyone, it's just a fact. And
Right.
If you think of, let's say, if tennis was a trade, like a joiner, plumber, plasterer, whatever, anyone that goes through an apprenticeship in a trade, it's all that underpinning stuff that gets done first, and then they learn how to actually operate in that real world. So it feels a little bit like that's why college tennis is now a viable option for people, because not because it prepares them for the life and business of being a professional, but they're at a stage in their life where they understand it without even being on it. They've just got better perspective and so on.
Yeah, exactly. And just the way the American college, well, universities in general are set up, is that summer period's massive because it just gives you an opportunity to like play with it.
Yeah.
And it's not your be all and end all. You're not,
Yeah.
You're going to go back to uni in September. And so it doesn't feel as huge, but you can get in 8 or 10 futures,
Yeah.
really get a strong feel for what it is.
Yeah.
And then that was definitely something that I noticed when I started playing futures, is because you get obviously become good friends with a lot of the uni boys, is they were really clear and motivated they were clear on why they were doing it. They'd made the decision and they had that freshness and excitement of being there at 22, 23. Whereas if you've been going since you were 17, is that's now a long time you've been at that sort of,
100%. It's such I say that to parents all the time as well. If you think about let's say nowadays, it's even earlier that people start their journey. It's one of the reasons I went into coach education, actually, because when I reached a point with a player where she kind of went full time and I couldn't commit to doing what I was traveling with her because we were starting for a family and so on. But I, had almost a metaphorical sabbatical, because I kind of had to go back and go, what do I want to do now with my career? And that period of time was when mini tennis had exploded, and all of a sudden it was like going back to 5-year-olds instead of typically it might be 9 or 10-year-olds. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to spend 13 years to get someone from 5 to 18 to not even the start of the journey if they want to be a professional. I would suggest that what you're talking about, that 21, 22, 23 is almost like when you could start to become, I'll use a real life term, a jobbing professional. What I mean? Where, a lot of people, when you say, well, you're not full-time professional, they think that what I'm saying is you're unprofessional. I'm saying, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you're a professional in a business sense, it means that you at least pay your way.